Good morning, everybody, and let me first welcome you to Iceland. Those of you who have traveled from afar, welcome you to this extraordinary place, the former military base, where we are reminded every day that the world has changed in a fundamental way. I doubt if there are many places in the world where one can be more inspired that new things can happen than this very location. And therefore, when Bala came to me with this idea, and I must admit it was pretty wild and daring, I decided to support it because somehow I believe very strongly that both we here in Iceland and maybe the world of entrepreneurs and innovation and IT are at a very important crossroads. And what we do in the next few years and where we do it will have a very strong impact on how the world moves forward. To some extent, we can divide what has happened in the last 20 years, at least here in Iceland, into different waves. The first wave was about 20 years ago or so when a few innovators, engineers and others started to do new things, primarily for the Icelandic market, in relationship with the fishing industry and some institutions of the state, the health service and others, bringing the new innovation technology and engineering together. And gradually, out of those beginnings grew companies, some of whom have now become the leading players in the world in their field. Marel is perhaps the most famous and prominent example of this first wave, but there are others. The second wave started about 10 years ago or so, when a number of young people coming to IT and computer science and engineering and innovation and entrepreneurship from many different directions became convinced that it was possible to start companies here in Iceland and have the entire world as their playing field. That new ideas and daring concepts could be realized within a reasonably short time and become profitable by connecting them to the entire world. And we have also seen in recent years many, in fact, astoundingly many examples of this second wave. To some extent, we could say perhaps that CCP is, like Marel was for the first wave, one of the prominent examples of this success. But there are many others. One could mention Mentor, for example, that developed software for schools and parents and families and teachers, helping young people to be educated in a more effective way, and now spreading that innovation not only in Sweden and Switzerland, but also in Britain. Another quite new example is an innovation helping the police forces in different countries to trace those who are photographed on the cameras in all parts of the city, and thereby strengthening the law enforcement and the campaign against crime. And if Icelandic innovation can help the British police force to be more effective, it is to some extent an example that almost anything is possible. We could this morning list many other such examples, but I know many of you who have worked in this second wave, as I call it, are here today, so it is not really necessary. But my primary message here this morning is this question of what I have called the third wave. That is the fundamental challenge that both we here in Iceland, but also the world of innovation and entrepreneurship faces in the second decade of the 21st century. Almost unlimited possibilities have been opened up. But we have seen in recent years that even the strongest companies in this field, like Facebook and Twitter, have been subjected to political hindrances and political pressure that are almost very foreign to the fundamental driving free spirit of this information and innovation. The case of an Icelandic member of parliament having to defend herself in courts because the authorities in another country demanded access to the Facebook and the Twitter data is just one of many examples of this kind. The struggle that the leading global companies in this field have had in China is another. So we face the fundamental question: how can we combine innovation, entrepreneurship, democracy, and progress? How can we make sure that this becomes an entirely open and free and productive and progressive and innovative playing field? How can we isolate the tendency to politically regulate this free spirit of innovation to such an extent that we can move forward simply on the basis of the innovative capabilities of people everywhere? Of course, there are many answers to this question, and I am not saying that I have the correct one. But I've gradually come to the conclusion that Iceland might serve, and I emphasize the word serve, as a location for helping to bring this third wave into reality, helping in creating an atmosphere and a location where people can freely come together and make sure that we can all move forward, irrespective of the attempt by others to put up barriers and hindrances. And why do I believe that Iceland could serve in this way? There are a number of reasons. First of all, the ancient, strong democratic culture of my country is and has been the real driving force of making Iceland one of the most IT-connected countries in the world. It was not a government policy. It was driven by the democratic nature and the will of the people. And both as a president and as a former professor of political science, I strongly believe that the fundamental democratic guarantee that we can wish for are not institutions or legal framework, but the democratic will of the people, which will make sure that those who want to hinder innovation and free debate and dialogue will not be allowed to carry the day. Secondly, we have already in Iceland, as we see in this conference, a sufficiently strong core of people in IT technologies, innovation and entrepreneurship to become partner with others in this field. We didn't have that 10 years ago, but we definitely have it today. Thirdly, the fact that Iceland has succeeded to become the leading clean energy country in the world offers, in my opinion, an interesting attraction, because to drive this innovation forward in the coming decades purely on clean energy is, as I know I don't have to explain to you, not only appealing, but almost a necessary qualification. We cannot allow ourselves to drive the innovation in the 21st century based on fossil fuel, simply because the cost in the destruction of the Earth's climate and in the destruction of the future potential of our children or our grandchildren would simply be too much. And you only have to look at the potential of the melting of the ice in Greenland, in the Arctic and in Antarctica to come to that conclusion. Innovation cannot be at all cost, and therefore innovation and clean energy have to be absolutely and fundamentally and irreversibly linked together. The fourth reason is somewhat coincidental and paradoxical, because a byproduct of the banking collapse and the financial crisis and the volcanic eruption of Eyjafjallajökull and then the following year, the second eruption in Grimsson, combined to make Iceland a global location, a place everybody knows about. Even the Prime Minister of China opened our meeting a year ago with the word, Mr. President, I'm happy to tell you that now everybody in China knows about Iceland. And I believe that when we want to drive something forward, when we want to bring people together, when we want to promote a new vision, a new form of cooperation, a new level of networking in the name of progress and entrepreneurship, it is a strong advantage to do it in a location everybody recognizes. Like peace negotiations have throughout the 20th century had a tendency to go to Switzerland and Geneva, where financial operations have had a tendency to go to Wall Street and other similar locations. Iceland has now become such a location. And in addition to all of this, which I hope our foreign guests will experience, the wildness of the Icelandic nature, and to some extent the unpredictability and sometimes the unruliness of the Icelandic people that partly was the reason for the banking collapse, but partly is also the reason for the creative, innovative sector, helps to create a kind of atmosphere which other people who come from different parts of the world find stimulating. That is why Andrew Sully, the futurologist who runs PopTech, has decided to host PopTech for the first time outside of the United States in Iceland at the end of next month. And I believe very strongly that the existence of this conference and the fact that so many of you have come together and the assembly of PopTech in Iceland in 4 weeks' time is really a concrete proof that what I have been advocating here this morning, that we should seriously look at Iceland as the serving station for bringing into reality the necessary third wave of innovation and technology and entrepreneurship for the benefit of the entire global community, not only can be examined, but must be examined. And if I have one wish for your great conference, I hope it will lead to such active cooperation in the weeks and the months to come. Because we really must convince those who now fear that the barriers being laid for innovation and communication in different parts of the world will somehow hinder the progress in the coming years, will not be allowed to stop the journey that started a few years ago. It is, in my opinion, one of the most exciting and extraordinary journeys that mankind has ever been invited on. And you are the drivers in that train. So you better do a good job. Thank you very much.